This is group Sputnik 2.
Alright guys, so we had Sputnik 2 for our mission. Mission slide, sorry. And then I'm Alicia.
I'm Savannah, James.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Kieran.
Alright, so just a little mission overview. On November 3rd, 1957, the USSR launched Sputnik 2 into Earth's orbit. And then this was the second spacecraft put into orbit, but it was the first to carry any living animal. And then after 162 days, Sputnik 2 burned up on its return through Earth's atmosphere.
The objective was just to see if living beings could survive in space. Yeah.
So, the only mission before Sputnik 2 was, of course, Sputnik 1, and the Russians wanted to continue their dominance in the space race by sending an animal into space. This is Sputnik 1, and that's what Sputnik 2 looks like. So it's a little more complex, but it's not much better. So, and also Sputnik 1 was launched a month prior. Like, there wasn't really planning between Sputnik 1 and 2 really fast. And, of course, the second landing object in space.
What mission did Sputnik come from? That one was obviously, it came from Sputnik 1, and that one didn't have, that one was successful, but it didn't have the living creature that came back. It was the second satellite launched into Earth's orbit and was the first to send the animal into space, which was a dog, obviously. What did Sputnik lead to? Changed almost nothing, and was the biggest achievement was scaring the Americans, but the Russians didn't learn anything from it because they killed the dog and they didn't really care, and that was a big thing for everyone else. They just thought it was animal cruelty because it was the dog was in a little tiny space and it couldn't move or anything like that, so I died of stress and overheating. But it was a stepping stone for more significant satellites being launched.
So, this is like a little dog, but, and it was a dog on Sputnik 2, and it was supposed to live for about a week before it was fed poison food and then died painlessly. But since the Russians were hurrying a lot, the heating and cooling system failed, so it got really, really hot in there, and then it just died of stress and overheating. And then Oleg Gazenko, who's a scientist for the Soviet Russians, said, "We shouldn't have done it. We did not learn enough from this mission to justify the death of the dog." So, yeah. It was just, oh cool, we put a dog in space and it died really fast. And then it goes to space like a boss.
Okay, so these are the missions that succeeded in bringing a human being to space, and it's just a lot, and I didn't put them all up there.
Alright, so the hardest part of the mission was the time constraints that the scientists had. They only put it out a month after, so they didn't really develop anything, nothing was fully developed, and nothing benefited from it. And then the Russians just wanted to stay ahead. This was a big deal for them. They wanted to show that they were the ones leading the space race. And then the satellite was poorly built, like we said before, and shouldn't have ever really been sent into space. It was kind of just a waste of materials and money and time. And then Sputnik 2 was basically as dirty as the cardboard box. It didn't really protect the dog from anything. And when it came back into the atmosphere, it just burned up. So the amount of time that they spent on it was just a month, like we said before, and they weren't able to fully develop a successful air spacecraft.
So, during the actual mission, a bunch of stuff went wrong. the thermal plates broke off the outside, and then because that happened, the insulation on the inside burned up and the light was passed out. And then because of that, the thermal regulation, the air conditioning stopped working also. And then the life support for the dog stopped working also. And then because of that, the dog obviously died. It was really hot in there.
So the life support system, this is kind of like this little carrying case. It's kind of like a little kennel, but for space. I mean, and if you look at it, it's not really anything elaborate.
The dog can't move at
Yeah.
all.
I mean, there wasn't really any way to get oxygen in there, like successfully or thoroughly, and to clean out, like they should have had a filter to like reapply. So they should have thought that out more carefully. The thermal protection, when it came back through the atmosphere, the spacecraft was burned up and there was no way for them to really like collect data afterwards. So it was kind of just a waste of a mission.
Oh, and looking at this picture, this whole part is like an ICBM that they just put the satellite on top. And then this actual part is like the satellite that went to space. And that little ball is the thing that the dog was sitting in. So this is a nuke, and that's the dog, pretty much.
Yeah.
So the actual missile that it was on wasn't even intended to go to space. It was just a converted ICBM. The most important part of the mission was to see whether or not animals could live in space for a long amount of time, but it's hard to guess whether or not something can live in space if it dies in 2 hours. So since all the thermal stuff stopped working, the dog just died. So they didn't get anything out of the mission. And then Dmitry Malish said it turned out that it was practically impossible to create a reliable temperature control system in such limited time constraints. So this shows that even the Russians knew how poorly built their satellite was. They just didn't care. They just wanted to get in space.
The mission didn't really succeed. It was like a yes and no, because yes, they got a living creature in space, but the living creature didn't survive, so they didn't get enough info off of it. And there was a lot of things they needed to change and fix.
But they got the animal up there, so it did succeed. But it just didn't come back.
Kind of, yeah.
So,
Alright, so here's just a little flight map so y'all can visualize this. So, yeah, this is confusing.
Can you explain?
Well, these are the orbits it took, and so it shows the points where it couldn't receive any data, and it was unintelligible. So it launched here, went around, and then these are all just the different orbits and times. Alright, so we're going to show you guys a little video of what went on kind of during this time.
the dog was like, originally, like, they had to pick out of like 10 different dogs, and it was like, he was chosen, but he was just a mutt, they were all just mutts.
It was a she.
I meant she.
They had a couple backups, like one for doing a simulator with, and one actually a backup for a backup. Okay, so I did calculations from October 25th to November, about November 3rd, about 10 days was for actually building it. 62 days the dog was up in space, which is about 70 days, 170 days for making, launching, and retrieving the dog. They didn't have a plan to bring it back, so that's why it took 162 days to get the dog back to area. So May 15th and October 12th was when the R7 rocket was transported. So I added it all together. It took about 10.5 months just to do the whole mission.
So, in hindsight, what could have been changed to make the mission more successful? Of course, more time. That was the biggest part. The SAL was poorly built, so it didn't work. And then, like, just nothing went exactly to plan. The instruments didn't work, the dog died, the satellite broke. It just didn't work. So, yeah, so it could have went better. So after Sputnik 2 was launched, it really brought to light whether or not animal testing should be allowed or whether it was ethical. Because of course it was terrible to die of heat stroke in a little container all by yourself. And then the Americans condemned it and said it was terrible. And the Russians didn't care at all. They kept doing it. But it is a necessary part of learning. Like you want to put a human up there or a dog and see which one dies faster. So it's a necessary step, but of course it's unsavory. And then just kind of picture this. That was funny.
Alright, so in summary, overall, Sputnik 2 was a poorly planned mission, and it was kind of used to further the Russians' steps to get into space and establish their dominance. And it was launched just a month after Sputnik 1, so really no time to develop anything. Then, although the mission didn't prove much, Sputnik 2 proved the way for all manned missions into space, showing that weightlessness won't kill an animal.
Okay, now I have my hometown hero speech. Okay, so my name is Laika. It's the dog on the spaceship now, and I was a stray from Moscow, Russia. But then these scientists picked me up off the streets, and they started training me, preparing me to go into space by like making me really hot and feeding me less and less food, putting me in small cages. Then after about a month, the scientists put me on a converted ICBM in the Baikonur Cosmodrome, which is like South Kazakhstan. It's not actually in Russia anymore, but it was in Russia. And then I sat on the ICBM for like 4 days before I was actually launched because of bad weather and stuff. But then once I was finally launched on November 3rd, 1957, I died like 2 hours after and became the first animal to go into space and the first animal to die in space, I guess. So, but for many years after my death, the Russians said that I lived for multiple days and died peacefully, but this is untrue, and in 2002, the Russians finally admitted that I died very quickly and painfully. The only recognition I ever got from the Russian government is this statue that's like that big in front of their NASA headquarters. What kind of NASA? So pretty much I was burned to death and then I got a statue that big. So they don't really care about me. And then in hindsight, the Russians realized how useless my mission was. So pretty much I was a dog that was put in a space capsule, sent to space, burnt to death, and nothing was learned about it. So yeah, my life was pretty lame, but it's better than starving to death on the streets of Moscow. I guess at the stray. I'm not sure. Yeah.
So we have any questions? So we have to reserve questions and answers.
Oh, it's not sure.